Good afternoon, everyone. We will now call the May 5th, 2025 board meeting to order. Mr. Wilborn, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Representing Educational District 1, we have Ms. Katie Howard.
Present.
Representing Educational District 2 and present via Zoom, we have Ms. Aretta Balden.
Present.
Representing Educational 3, Dr. Ken Zev.
Present.
Representing Educational District 4 and Board Vice Chair, Ms. Jennifer McDonald.
Also present.
Representing Educational District 5 and Board Chair, Ms. Erica Mitchell. Representing Educational District 6, Mr. Tolton Pace.
Present.
Representing Educational District at-large Seat 7, Mr. Alfred Shibby Brooks.
Present.
Representing Educational District at-large Seat 8, Ms. Cynthia Briscoe Brown.
Present.
And representing Educational District at-large Seat 9, Ms. Jessica Johnson.
Present.
Also present, we have Dr. Brian Johnson, Superintendent, and Madam General Counsel Nina Gupta. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we entertain a motion to approve the April 15, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Chair McDonald, second by Board Member Briscoe Brown. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the May 5th, 2025 board meeting?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Chair McDonald, second by Board Member Briscoe Brown. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Johnson, would you please bring the work session items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have three presentations today. The first is an update on strategic plan from Chief Strategy Travis Norvell. The second is the normal monthly financial update from Dr. Lisa Bracken, CFO. And the last one's on student outcomes focused governance, interim goal 1, which is literacy and proficiency. Mr. Norvell, if you'll come up. And I also want to frame, I know tomorrow the board has a retreat, so you'll hear a fairly condensed version around the strategic plan, but excited to kind of share the engagement components and where things are. Travis.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson, Board of Education. Happy to walk through our presentation. We snuck in one presentation, but it's going to feel like 4. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share an update on the strategic planning process and the draft framework that we've got. And like Dr. Johnson said, we're going to dive super deep into it tomorrow during the board retreat. But we also wanted to use this opportunity to call out a couple of initiatives and priorities that came out during the strategic plan development. So we're going to dive deeper with our subject matter experts into career readiness. So we have Dr. Tashara Wilson and Dr. Dewan Freeman here for that. Into our comprehensive facilities planning with Tracy Richter from HPM, and then our strategic funding partnerships with Katie Post from the Atlanta Partners for Education. So I'll start with an overall overview of the process and the framework. So just to remind you all, this fall, we spent our time focusing on the 100-day plan, which really helped us assess and understand where APS is, both quantitatively and qualitatively. You can find all that information in a big report under atlantapublicschools.us/everychild. And in there, you'll find data as well as the qualitative work that we did this fall. Over the past 4 or 5 months, we've been diving deeper into the strategic direction as well as some of the strategy development. And so it started with a lot of y'all's work in January and February on values and vision. We dived a little bit deeper into what we should be doing to achieve those, and then fine-tuning some of our language over the past month or so. And we're excited to share our draft framework to you all for review. So you all were there, but I'll remind those of you who were not listening in. After 25 community engagement sessions, 2 in every cluster, 4 virtual, 3 Spanish-speaking family, thousands of surveys, both employee and staff, many meetings that Dr. Johnson held with individuals and groups and visiting classrooms and schools, and pretty much every advisory and task force that we have available. We pulled it all together to create the next 5-year strategic plan for the district. We've put together a report that's on our APS Connect site, so the same Atlanta Public Schools website ending in APS Connects, that shows the overview in each one of these sections. What were the themes, what we heard, what was included, and kind of you can follow the journey from needs assessment to where we are today. And one of the overarching pieces that we heard over and over again is that we are Atlanta's public school system. Not just any public school system, not just an urban public school system, not just a school system, but we are Atlanta's public school system, the one and only. And so our strategic plan should be aligned to that. So you'll see a lot of that wording, as well as starting to throw in a few different colors in there, some Atlanta color into there for our strategic plan. And like Dr. Johnson said, we're going to dive deeper tomorrow for those of you interested. Where we landed is educating and empowering Atlanta students to shape the future. Some of the feedback we got that we heard over and over again was, in our current mission and vision statement, the word educate wasn't there. It also didn't mention the word Atlanta, so it could have been cut and paste from any other school district around the country. So we started talking about educating. People asked for a little more than that. You want to build them as well, empower them. That got to that. And then we had a large conversation around preparing students ready for college, career, life, for future, for opportunities. At the end of the day, the feedback we got was we needed it broader. They needed to shape the future, not only their own future, but the future of the city and the world around them. And so that's how we landed on this phrasing, educating and empowering Atlanta students to shape the future. We are Atlanta's public school system. Here you'll see some of the conversation for tomorrow is around our goals. You'll see 1, 2, 3 on the bottom left. Literacy, math, and college and career readiness still came to the top of all priorities. It was one thing everyone agreed on, that these were 3 big areas that we wanted to focus on. Tomorrow we'll look at some of the target numbers, our past performance in these areas to get feedback. 3rd grade students in ELA, English Language Arts, 8th grade students in math, and then college and career readiness. But also there was this desire for more. There was this desire for what can make me excited about showing up, participating, collaborating, working together. And so we have these big bets that came through those conversations. These are things that, yes, the school district has responsibility for, but it involves involving the entire city to help us get here. Those are things like universal pre-K 3-4. Early learning came up a lot. An average teacher salary of $100,000. We should be leading the way with this. Implementing individual student success plans for every student, not just once you get to high school or for IEPs, but for every student. And then what are we doing to meet the needs of every cluster? So how do we leverage some of our facilities to provide community hubs in every cluster? So we have a combination of both these student outcomes as well as these big bets. Here you'll see our strategic focus areas as well as some of our strategies. It is grounded in some phrasing that comes from Dr. Johnson's 100-day plan with back to basics. State of the district pulled in a community of believers from Dr. Krem, Alonzo Krem. And at the end of the day, it's our plan is a community of believers getting back to basics. We need that community of believers, and we need to be grounded in what those basics are. So on the left side, you'll see this community of believers. This is what our expectation is as adults. Our strength is our team. Within each one, what you'll see is a little line about what Atlanta students will have as part of that area, and then 3 strategies underneath each one. So our strength is our team, our responsibility is shared, and our system is efficient and effective. So you'll see kind of a staff focus on the first, a more civics focus on the second, and then operationally where we are on the third. And then on the back to basics, of course, focusing on our instructional core first, then that care for every child, and you'll see a focus here on trusted, supportive adults. And then at the end of the day, you want to enjoy coming to school as well. And so sparking student curiosity. And so a few things I'll call out here, which is a follow-up to the presentations that follow. You'll see under our responsibility as shared is expanding our relationship with Atlanta Partners for Education. So you'll hear from Katie Post to share a little bit of what that looks like. Our system is efficient and effective. You see maximized facility use for student and community good. So you'll hear from Tracy on that. And then under we are sparking student curiosity, expanding access to high interest offerings. You'll hear a little bit from Dr. Wilson and Dr. Freeman on that topic. And you can't manage what you don't measure. So we've identified some draft KPIs. Again, we'll dive deeper tomorrow into these, but key performance indicators that will help determine whether we're on track in each one of these areas. So this is where we dive deeper into subgroups for the core, looking at absenteeism, as well as disciplinary disproportionality for care, student curiosity, what access is provided to all students and opportunities. And then on the community of believers, a lot of our staff metrics, followed by what we expect of our community and families, and then more of the operational metrics in our system is efficient and effective. So we have a few next steps we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow One is around building out the implementation plans, the action plans. So once we get the go-ahead that we're on the right track, then we start diving deeper into each one of these strategies. Who owns it? What's the timeline? What's the action plan? And how are we going to monitor that progress? What dashboards will we leverage to do it? This is an example of what one of those could look like, aligned to the conversation that I'm about to invite up here. We're also going to be building out change management and communications plans, and then a board. We have a draft board calendar of what this could look like for these presentations for next year, aligned to the strategic plan. With that, I'll pause for any questions you may have, understanding that we'll be able to dive much deeper tomorrow.
Board Member Dr. Zeff, and then Board Member Howard.
Thank you for this, Travis. This document's come a long way, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it. Just on the page, on the first overview page, that says what our 3 strategic goals are and how we're going to, this one. I love the 1 through 3. There's a great research basis behind these 3 milestones: 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, and post-secondary success. If we could make sure that there's a clear connection between the by 2030 and how we're going to drive these goals. So it might be in attachments, it might be links. I think everyone loves the idea of universal preschool, of 100,000. I mean, these are all great ideas, but it's not clear how those are going to help us to get to those key milestones. And so I don't know if there's links or if there's a research paper attached to it, nothing crazy, but just something so people understand that if we pay teachers $100,000 average, these are the good things that are going to happen from it. That linkage isn't clear to me, and I know it's not meant to be here right now, but I think as we build this out, I think we want to be crystal clear that if we do these things by 2030, this is what's going to explicitly drive our success.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Echo the same appreciation for all the work that's gone into this and being present at the engagements. I know that we got a lot of great feedback, and there were a lot of great ways of getting that information from folks and the questions that were posed to people. And following up on what Ken just shared, and I can't not wait to dive into it more tomorrow, but how it aligns with the budget. Like, how are we going to show that and really, make sure people understand that these are our goals, our priorities, and this is how we're connecting to the budget. So show me your budget, show me your priorities. And I'm excited to see the mention of the community hubs and how I think later on in the presentation that'll come up. But curious to find out more why that was something that's put forth. I mean, very supportive, but really want to understand, the data and the reasoning behind that too.
Thank you. And I'm sure CFO Dr. Bracken will talk about this in the tentative budget. But a lot of this year's budget was getting the house in order, building that foundation so that these big bets can be more realistic when financials can better be aligned to those big bets. But thank you.
Just one point to that. As we go forward, the budget will be built based on the strategic plan. So, in fact, the priorities drive the budget, and so we'll be able to talk about how many dollars we're investing in each area. And each of those areas, go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow, so I don't want to, we'll spend a lot of time. But these key performance indicators, like what really should be happening is if we go, go back again. Go back to the other slide now. I just thought about it. No, you're right. That one. All right. So what really should be happening is, like, when we report to the board, we'll report around these 18, whatever the 18 things are. We'll pick 2 per month. There's 11 months. We'll pick 2 per month. There'll be a mid-year January update on where we are with the big 3. There'll be an end-of-year update on where we are with the big 3, and then we'll pick 2 per month, whether they 1 from each side or 2 from. We'll determine that. He's got a draft calendar we worked through, talked about a little bit. So there's a lot of structure to what's coming to the board. It keeps the team focused, but it also helps keep the board focused. It keeps everybody aligned to where we're going and what the priorities are. So excited to dig into the conversation. I'll tell you, like, we'll talk about tomorrow, but I don't have as much energy around, like, these X's that are on the numbers. If you go back, I don't have as much energy around what the number is. Pick the number. but we're going to have a number, and we're going to march towards the number. You can even see on today's soft G, there are too many X's and Y's, undefined within like where we're going. And when it's undefined, it doesn't provide clarity administratively, and it doesn't provide clarity, obviously at the school level. And there's this level of ambiguity that's can be beneficial from an accountability standpoint, but clear is kind, right? And so we need to talk about where we're going because it helps hold everybody accountable. So yeah, I'm excited about tomorrow's conversation to lean in and put that structure, make sure that structure that's in place. And Travis can speak to this. We'll talk about again this more tomorrow. But I was pretty dogged on like a simplified, clear, concise strategic plan, not a beautiful 100-page document, but like concision is king. And how do we make sure that everybody understands where we're going, and we're really clear about why we're going there, and everybody can see themselves in it. So still working on that, excited about tomorrow's conversations.
Board Member Brooks, did you have a question?
Yes. Thank you so much for laying this out for us. I saw, and I don't remember which slide it was, I was trying to look for it, and it was just some of the KPIs or metrics that we'd be looking for. Some of the things that I saw were like number of students enrolling in post-secondary. Yes, this one, thank you. Yes. My only question is something that I've always asked whether or not we're tracking is, yes, we're tracking how many, we should be tracking how many kids are enrolling in post-secondary, but how many are completing, and what is the time frame of their completion? How many are completing in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, et cetera? I also have curiosity of how many of our students are we retaining in the city? So upon their graduation from college, how many are continuing to live in the city of Atlanta? I think a lot of our conversation is always, just citywide is always about we need to see more Atlanta in Atlanta, especially in a lot of our corporate buildings and whatnot. So are we tooling our students to have gainful employment and home ownership in the city? And I think, in my opinion, I think that is the ultimate indicator of whether or not we're being successful as a school district, especially in a city like Atlanta. And so I would love to be able to know how many of our kids are we retaining.
Great. Thank you. It actually led to.
I'm sorry.
I'd like
I'm
to
sorry.
go back and forth because this is like this was actually a conversation around these metrics is where do they live? Do they live in the things that you have more control over or less control over? Are they more leading indicators? Are they more lagging indicators? And so I love this conversation. Looking forward to kind of diving deeper tomorrow.
And my last thing was the individual success plan. I know Dr. Johnson, we talked about it, but just really defining like, what is that, right? What does that look like? When we say that a child has an IEP, we know what that means. We know what kind of accommodations you can get. You know what it means. Yeah. What does this mean? And so laying that out, I think would also just be helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it for questions. Dr. J? Tomorrow, great. Travis, thank you very much, as always, for such thorough work.
Thank you very much. I will now introduce Dr. Dwan Freeman, our director of CTAE, as well as Dr. Tashara Wilson, our principal of Atlanta College and Career Academy, to walk through one of those priority areas that we just talked about, which is career readiness.
Great, thank you.
I'll be your host through this presentation. I'll come back to introduce the next person.
We're never letting you go too far, Travis.
Good afternoon. So Career, Technical, and Agriculture Education, or CTAE pathways, are a series of 3 courses in an area of study that provides technical skills to students in pursuit of high-demand, high-skilled, or high-wage occupations. In middle school, our focus is career awareness, exposure, and exploration. In high school, the focus narrows to career development, content mastery, and employability skill development. We are very proud of our programs and our students, earning a 98.96% graduation rate for CTA students last year. And now we're up to 50 valedictorians, salutatorians, and/or star students that have finished the CTAE pathway as well. This year alone, we have over 57 students advancing and competing this summer in national and international competitions in CTSO or CTAE areas. We currently have 24 middle school programs where at least one is aligned to high school equivalent in the cluster. And we also have 57 high school pathways that represent 14 of the 16 national career clusters. This variety represents a wide range of career opportunities that meet and complement our students' interests. In FY26, we are very excited to introduce 4 new pathways. Next year, South Atlanta High School will offer the full phlebotomy pathway, and Thurl High School will begin incorporating phlebotomy in its allied health pathway. Students completing these pathways will test to earn their certified phlebotomy technician's credential. At Douglas High School, the electrical pathway in the construction cluster is being added. Students completing this pathway will be eligible for Level 1 electrical certification. In addition to construction electrical pathway at Douglas, the Atlanta College and Career Academy will be entering year 2 of HVAC electrical as an add-on to their HVAC and refrigeration pathway. We are also excited to introduce heavy equipment operation as a pathway at South Atlanta High School as well. This pathway will train students to operate utility tractors and heavy equipment such as bulldozers and excavators. Completers of this pathway will be able to earn heavy equipment operations Level 1 certification, in addition to access to a robust apprenticeship pool of opportunities here in the metro area. Finally, not only new to the state, but new to Atlanta Public Schools, will be the entertainment, sports, and event management pathways at Mays and North Atlanta High Schools, the second and third programs of its kind in Georgia. Designed to leverage the robust athletic and arts programs at each school, this pathway will propel students forward to in-demand careers across the country in sales and event promotion, event management, and professional management. In addition to eligibility for an event planning and management credential, students will experience a plethora of shadowing and internship opportunities with partners here in our city. Now, Dr. Wilson will share some updates on the College and Career Academy.
All right, good afternoon. So this slide highlights all of the in-demand pathways offered at the Atlanta College and Career Academy. The right-hand side of the slide calls out the healthcare pathways that are currently available. We do offer scholars the opportunity to participate in dental science, patient care, and emergency medical responder. We have an amazing partnership with Grady Hospital that allows all of our patient care pathway completers to spend 9 weeks in a high-quality work-based learning experience during the final quarter of the school year. Students have the opportunity to visit different departments within Grady, like the NICU unit and the burn unit, and apply all of the technical skills as well as the employability skills that they have learned throughout the year. To prepare scholars for this awesome placement and their future careers in healthcare, Grady sends a clinical nurse educator to ACCA twice a week to co-teach with our instructor. It is truly an amazing partnership. If there is interest in expanding healthcare pathways or any other pathways at ACCA, we offer the following 2 scenarios for your consideration. Option A, expansion within ACCA's existing facility. We currently have 2 available classrooms that could be used to expand healthcare science programming. We recommend offering only accelerated career pathways that are aligned with high-demand industry sectors. To ensure program success, we recommend partnering directly with industry leaders to identify the most relevant pathways to offer, support teacher recruitment, and provide input on lab setup and required equipment. To support this expansion, we would request district funding for 2 additional teacher positions and support purchasing lab equipment, materials, and supplies. An alternative option would be to plan and open a new ACCA facility dedicated to expanding accelerated career pathways. This facility could focus solely on healthcare science or include a broader mix like manufacturing, welding. There are many pathways to choose from. To preserve our current model and avoid impacting local school enrollment, we recommend continuing the structure of students spending half the day at their home school and the other half of their day at ACCA. As with option A, this expansion would require strong industry partnerships to help us shape relevant pathway offerings, hire qualified instructors, and design and equip lab spaces. To move forward with option B, the district would need to identify a suitable facility to launch phase 3, provide funding for the teachers, and provide funding for equipment, materials, and supplies.
Okay, team, any questions? Cynthia?
Yeah, thank you for this. This is a great update on the success of our Atlanta College and Career Academy in particular, and on the way we've been developing our CTAE programs over the years. A couple of questions. Can we just go back 2 slides? Back to the one with the current enrollment projection. Nope, too far. Other, that's it. That'll do it. I see some numbers here with enrollment projections for next year. What are those projections based on?
So students actually complete an application for enrollment. We are currently entering the lottery process for students to participate next year. 56 is currently the max number that we can serve, and we have waiting lists for all of these pathways.
That was my next question, is whether 56 is our capacity on the dental science and the patient care. Is the emergency medical responder also a 56 limit, or is it the 30 students that's shown here?
So currently we have 30 students that have completed an application to participate. Atlanta Technical College determines the max enrollment for emergency medical responder.
Do we have, at this time, withdraw that. So the options would be either expansion within the facility or building it up a whole new facility. Do we have reason to believe that there are enough students to fill an entire new facility?
Yes, ma'am. So looking at our current applications, we received over 1,100 applications for next school year.
Wow, for these 3 health sciences?
Not for these 3, that's overall.
Oh,
for
okay.
all of the pathways that you see here. Specifically for patient care, we received 152 applications. However, we can only serve 28 in the morning and 28 in the afternoon. So that gives you a snapshot of the number of students that are unserved, because we simply don't have enough space to serve all the students.
Okay, and I assume it's similar with the other 2. The numbers are similar. So if we expanded into the 2 available classrooms, am I hearing correctly that we would still not be able to support all of the students who want to pursue these pathways?
So it depends on the pathways that we determine we want to offer. The majority of our pathways that you see here, 28 is the max for any session. However, we cap enrollment at 20 for 3 of the pathways: automotive, carpentry, and HVAC, because for safety reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Shivi?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Are we saying 57 students overall is what the ACCA can serve, or are we just talking about these particular programs?
So, for example, in patient care, we can serve 28 for the morning session, and we can serve 28 during the PM session. for a total of 56 students total for the entire academic year.
Understood. So I guess what I'm asking is maybe more comprehensive. So I'm keeping in mind from aviation maintenance all the way down to teaching as a profession. How many students are we serving at the ACCA?
So max for next year is 680. Our
Okay.
enrollment is dependent upon each individual pathway, the AM and the PM session, and the max number of students that we can serve for each session. So total, it's 680, 340 for the morning session and 340 for the afternoon.
Do we know where our applicants are zoned? And is there any concentration of interest from
Yes.
particular areas?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Yes, we have the number of applications that we received from each high school, and we can share that data.
And is there any knowledge of the if there is any correlation, like in this zone, this area, this side of town, kids tend to want to take this program?
I don't know that exactly, but I will say when we share that data specifically where applications exist, if the pathway is available at the home school, they don't go to ACCA for it. So there may be interest in, let's say, culinary arts, but that's available at Washington and Therrell. So you won't see those two clusters represented in the data there.
Right, but okay, thank you. Here's where my heart is. As I know we're going to be having so many conversations about needing to attract our kids back from private schools or whatever other choices families are making instead of sending their kids to APS. When we used to have 100,000 kids in the 70s and now we got 47, right? As we're having conversations about needing to attract and right-size our entire district and attract kids to a Washington, to a Carver, to a South Atlanta, you know, I think to myself, why if we have empty classrooms and spaces, are we not thinking about building these offerings out in schools so that we can attract students from throughout the district to attend those schools to be able to get this instead of building another offering that keeps you from going to one of the schools?
Yeah. So part of introduction to this conversation is that's exactly what we're leaning into. So if you go back maybe to the South Atlanta slide as an example. Yeah. So this would be a prime example of a situation where the build out is happening. They're not, now here's where there's real conversation. So first of all, let's talk about this tomorrow too. First of all, you can't do everything everywhere, right? Because you've got to, in particular, once you start talking about, like, some of these programs cost significant dollars to stand up. But I think the real conversation is a philosophical conversation about creating access for students. And so the real conversation is, if I really like heavy equipment, how do I get access to that if I'm in another part of, if I'm not in the South Atlanta footprint? And so I think that's where we've got a lot of conversation. It's the right time to be having all these conversations as we go down the comprehensive facility plan pieces and what we're placing where. But frankly, right now, a big part of the work that both Dr. Freeman, Dr. Wilson will be taking on is to lean into CTAE explicitly and to see where there's more opportunity to offer. Frankly, two things I think should drive the offerings. Thing one is obviously what students are interested in, but thing two, I don't know which one to call one. It may be reversed when I say number two, but number two is where's their real career opportunity for jobs, right? So from a projectability standpoint, we don't want to put a lot of investment in a thing that's going to look completely different in 5 years, because if I come in as a freshman and I'm taking that, by the time I graduate, it's over. But where are things headed, and how do we position our students to be really successful in those spaces are real conversations to have, coupled with our students that are going to Ivy Leagues and all the other places really as well, right? So you've got this CTAE component, you've got, our students that are going to four-year Ivy League, so we've got the whole gamut, and how do we serve all of it well? So you raise a great point that we can lean into even more tomorrow as we talk about really sparking student curiosity.
Holden.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Freeman, and great to see you again, Dr. Wilson. It's been a little while. Great information. I love the conversations that we're having around this space. This is a space that I live and breathe daily in workforce development and post-secondary readiness, so really excited about all the possibilities and certainly the things that we're currently offering. A couple questions, and some of these may be more for conversations later. I'll put ACCA and some other programs on my to-do list very, very soon. But first question, Dr. Wilson, you mentioned about high-demand careers, and I know ever so often on a regular cycle, Technical College System of Georgia puts out a high-demand occupations list. And so wondering just how often we do comparisons of what we're offering against that list, particularly when it comes to what Dr. Johnson mentioned, kind of the 10-year projection of, will this career still be in demand? How many openings are there currently? What's the average wage? So that's kind of first question. So I'll go there first and then go to the others.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Pace. It's great to see you as well,
Absolutely.
sir. We actually utilize the list that are published by the state on a daily basis. That leads the work. We want to ensure that all of the pathways and program offerings that we provide for our scholars are in demand in the metro Atlanta area. There are specific lists that share amazing opportunities right here in the metro Atlanta area. So a part of our certification is ensuring that we are aligned to all of the in-demand careers. We actually received an email from Dr. Johnson to ensure that what we're offering is actually in demand in the metro Atlanta area, and we are.
Perfect. Thank you. And then just from a funding question, currently, and I don't know who this may go to, but are we, for ACCA, is it, and even CTAE, just across the board, are these, as we know, all APS dollars? Are there any external grant dollars that come in to support this work as well, be it corporate or private family foundations or otherwise?
Okay, so we'll start at ACCA. We were intentional about our post-secondary offerings aligning to the accelerated career published list. All of those pathways are supported by the ACE grant and dual enrollment funding. And so, yes, there are a plethora of dollars to support those pathways.
Excellent.
The programs themselves, teachers are funded through our FTE that we earn, and our programs are supported with the Perkins Improvement Grant and, of course, our local agencies match.
Thank you so much. And just as a note, we can talk more. Would love to look at how we might be able to leverage some additional dollars to support these opportunities as well, particularly as we have some budget conversations going forward. So look forward to having that conversation. Two last quick questions. One, and you kind of hit at this a little bit, how do we promote the programs to our students kind of across the district? And then kind of final question in terms of follow-up tracking. This goes back to Shivi's question from when Travis was presenting. Would love to see, I know with, a WorkSource Atlanta, for example, from federal funding, they do a 12-month kind of tracking to say, hey, where are people placed, be it youth, in school, out of school, adults, what have you, what wage are they making, those kind of things. So would love to see if we're not doing that, that's something that we look into going forward.
Jessica, I think you want to add on.
Yes, thank you so much. I am really excited that we have so many students who are interested in getting some of these certifications and exploring these opportunities. One of the things that I'm hearing in my community, in my side of town specifically, is that students applied and they didn't get in, or they didn't have the right course sequence to be eligible. And so I'm curious, as we are expanding the access, if we are also looking at how we may ensure that students are teed up to be able to take advantage of this across the entire district.
Yeah.
If they are not receiving the seat, it's because we don't have the available space. There's a lottery, and there's an opportunity to offer more.
Yeah. So let's be clear. I want to speak to a couple things. We're going to expand pretty rapidly. I think one of the conversations we got to have is as we talk about our facilities master plan. And Dr. Fry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we do offer a good bit of CTAE, and we talked about ACCA, but we offer a good bit of CTAE at schools. So a lot of the things that are at ACCA are across the district in schools. So I know we hyper-focused on ACCA, but there's even more room for expansion, which is an area that we 100% are going to lean into. Also, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I will. I was meeting with Tommy and Usher and Dr. Butler this morning, and one of the real conversations, frankly speaking, is there's a little bit of disconnect between the academic counseling and a 6-year plan development, which really needs to be integrated, can be integrated into the student success plan. But the integration of really making sure that we are advising students from an academic standpoint early in middle school, and at minimum, right? Like, and that academic advising happens in such a way that they can build the sequence of classing so that there's not a question when they get to high school, like oh my gosh, I don't have this thing. And so we've got to take a little bit of a step back and make sure that we get ourselves organized in a way where our master schedule builds, our counseling, our academic counseling is interconnected with our early post-secondary work, such that works as an ecosystem and organism the way it's really supposed to work, or the way it's best from an academic standpoint. So we can talk about that more tomorrow too, but there's a lot of opportunity in that space to bring even tighter connection with some pivots.
Right. Katie has a quick one.
Real quick.
Sure.
Can't wait to talk more about this tomorrow, and deeply appreciate all the work both of you do and being on the board for ACCA as a rep for the board. I see it firsthand. And knowing that we have a member from the Atlanta Metro Chamber of Commerce on the board who gives active feedback, and the data, and knowing we're grounding these decisions in data and relevance. And I'm so excited about CTAE expanding and ACCA expanding and seeing those numbers. 1,100 kids, applicants, that's huge. But lifting up right now how we get feedback on what students are interested in. I know Dr. Johnson mentioned it, and we heard a lot of feedback like South Atlanta. They've had some great CTAEs in place, but there's some great student feedback around what they'd like to see more of or see something shift. So how are you all getting that data right now?
So, youth science. We do recommend that all of our scholars take advantage of the youth science career assessment. All middle school students and high school students have access to the youth science career assessment. And the youth science career assessment is a research-based assessment that helps students identify their natural talents, their natural skills, and pathways that they have an aptitude for, careers that they have an aptitude for. We encourage all scholars to begin pursuing CTAE offerings by making an informed decision, by taking the youth science first, to ensure that when they decide on an amazing career, it's aligned to their natural skills and talents. And work won't feel like work. I'll give this story. I took the youth science career assessment, and youth science told me, Tashara, you should be a high school principal, and here I am.
Great example. And then how that helps us build out like what we're going to be offering more of. Still knowing we need to make sure these are, relevant pathways, but that student feedback on what they want to see more of, to Shivy's point and Tolton's around how are we really gauging their interest to make sure they are engaged and this is something that's relevant for them too.
Absolutely. One of the highlights for youth science is that it kind of focuses on skills as well. So even if we don't have the capacity to erect a pathway, we can align it to the skill set that is aligned to something that we do offer and work with the communications with students. Outside opportunities, our summer programming, our internship opportunities, sometimes those are better aligned to the interest that they have than the full pathway just with capacity. So youth science has been critical for us identifying opportunities.
And there's, and I would go back and say that there's going to be a real opportunity to connect youth science to the academic counseling, to the 6-year plan. All that stuff has to be integrated. And right now we're way too fragmented. Like one thing lives in, and this is like, I just do real talk. I don't, and some of these talks I ain't had, it gets me in trouble. I'm just an old country boy. But I just do real talk. And so the real talk of it is, you've got a piece living in student, I'm just being honest, okay? We've got a piece living in student services, we've got a piece living in academics, we've got a piece living in schools, and it's just problematic. It doesn't work that way. Like, it has to be integrated, it has to have a North Star, and if it has a North Star, it all will come together and work. But we can't have these siloed divisional things, because the right doesn't know what the left is doing. And so we're going to bring that together under one house and make sure that it's really tight, so that when a student gets an experience, if we're going to use youth science as our thing, which I like youth science, we're able to say, this is what you may have potential to do. And as a byproduct of what you may have potential to do, let's look at this sequencing of courses, academic, CTAE, the whole gamut, and actually make really informed decisions about where the student is headed. So we're going to lean pretty heavily into that.
Great. Thanks, Katie. I think that's it, Dr. Johnson.
Insert
Welcome back.
transition joke here. And now I'd like to introduce Tracy Richter from HPM, who's going to walk through facilities planning, which will help enable a lot of the conversation we just had as well.
Thank you, Travis. Good afternoon, members of the board. It is an honor to be able to work with such a distinguished and district of legacy and tradition. I get to do this across the country, as you know. I'm really excited to start my work with you. And so I know it's not always easy work, but it's work that's necessary to support exactly what we just saw. I love following academic presentations, because this is what drives what we do. When we think about comprehensive facilities planning, a lot of districts enter this into because of some state they're in, whether it's financial, whether it's condition, whether it's capacity and utilization, whether it's how their demographics are working. But the problem with just paying attention to one is that you'll never get the full kind of grasp of what a facilities plan should have in it. It should address all of these things like demographics and condition and educational framework and finances and budget, all come into play when you're doing comprehensive facilities planning. This stool on here, unfortunately, it's like 2006 clip art, but I can't seem to find one better than this, because I think it represents what school facilities sit under, this community transparency, this idea that the community owns these buildings in their communities, as well as the school board. These school facilities sit on each of these staples of condition, of enrollment, of what's important educational framework, probably the cornerstone of this, and the cost, not just to operate schools, but the overall cost of budgets and how we do things in the school district. And if you ignore one, that stool becomes like every bad restaurant chair you sit in. It will never, ever be stable. And so we have to approach this from a comprehensive view. Not only that, but the facilities plan also is something that, in the state of Georgia, and I've said this to all of you, is that you have this wonderful thing called eSPLOST that allows you to invest in your infrastructure and invest in your infrastructure. And so the other side to that, though, is that Georgia school districts have become accustomed to facilities planning to the SPLOST, not doing real 10 and 15-year long-term visioning when it comes to their facilities. And so this has a different approach. This is going to build a comprehensive facilities plan that will inform your SPLOST, that will be the cornerstone for how you will make decisions on the roadmap based on that vision that it creates. Sure, it gives an implementation piece to that, but it really sets a longer-term vision for how schools will look in the future. And so, when you're looking across, and this is, and again, I share with you that I get to do this across the country and work with communities, that we're seeing these trends in public education that sometimes make us panic a little bit. When you're seeing, decreasing birth rates, and, when populations and student gentrification isn't happening. We're not seeing renewal of students in neighborhoods. We're seeing higher instances of low socioeconomic and transits, especially in the public school system. all these resulting in lower and lower enrollments. Now, the thing is that most educational opportunity providers are facing these very same things. You know, charter schools aren't getting more kids because of births, because the births aren't there for anybody. And so the same happens with parochial and private. But this is something that we are facing. And so these increased challenges in trying to, and then also the increased challenges of trying to hire certified and qualified teachers across the board. I look at this CTAE and I think about all those wonderful teachers that we had retire in these last 10 years that we're having a harder time finding the certified teachers in it. You get to special education, you get to these fine arts, where the competition to get these professionals it's increasing. Obviously, demand for more programs and services as you go across these questions that you were asking, but also those increased costs in deferred maintenance and cost of construction. These are concerning things in the public education sector. I just delivered a plan in Ohio that square footage was $660 a square foot. That's starting to get disturbing when you see that in the Midwest, and you know that's just bigger in these urban areas. And then certainly that leads to some abundance of capacity and facilities in a district and how you look at those moving forward. And so how do you approach that? It has to be, first of all, you have to work with good, trustworthy data and good vetted data. You have a rich tradition of working with your community and transparency. We're going to continue to do that in this plan, and I'll show you that. But that data has to move back and forth. It has to be understood. It has to be understood that data can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And so we want to make sure that we understand why we are using those data sets we're using. We do community engagement from beginning to end. It doesn't stop, and it's circular. It's always going to work together. The most important piece to this, I believe, is the educational framework, is how we make decisions for facilities based on how you want to deliver education moving forward. That's the cornerstone. As we move into, and I'll share this when we get with the task force this Thursday, there's some people who might be disappointed that we're not going to talk about facilities on Thursday night. We're going to drive it through this. We're going to drive it through how we use the data and how the programs are impacting what we do. Again, creating that facilities plan first and creating that long-term vision for the district to inform the SPLOST. But eventually it all has to align together. The demographics, staff and resources, your financial resources, how that all aligns together and how your facilities support that. I believe that facilities are just one part of teaching and learning. You have 1,000 resources to get a student educated from kindergarten to 12th grade. Facilities are one piece to that. And so they all have to work together to make sure that we can assure better student outcomes as we move forward. The process is really about discovery and validation and getting it all together and then doing real good planning. It has to align to the strategic plan. I shared with Dr. Bradshaw and Dr. Johnson early in this, is that if it doesn't align to the strategic plan, let's just not do it. Because that has to be a key indicator here of where we're going to. And the other thing, it has to lead to student outcomes and how student outcomes are impacted by those facilities. And whether it's growth in facilities, decline in facilities, just improvement of facilities, whatever it is, it has to show forward-moving thinking about how we improve the educational experience of the student. And so establishing that educational framework is centered around a lot of things. Things like, school size and exceptional student, just go through the list of all these program offerings, but also the structure of what your school district looks like. It's things like grade configuration or how capacity is defined or how big schools should be or small schools should be. All of those things define who you are. And so, and sometimes, and I like Dr. Johnson's comment about, sometimes it just has to be kind of simple in front of you. I worked with a school district a dozen years ago that had 26 grade configurations in it. 26. I was trying to figure out how a family could walk in and navigate a district that had 26 grade configurations in it. And so, although grade configuration sounds simple enough, it's not always simple. And so, but reconfirming where you want to be as a school district is really important. But there also has to be operational parameters established in this. How do we renovate versus replace buildings? Or how do we continue or discontinue or retire buildings? How do we get good balanced distribution of funding that is both community and data driven? Sometimes it's difficult when some parts of a city have more need at a certain time to distribute it evenly, but over these eSPLOST programs to show how you're investing across the city. And then eventually getting your portfolio to where it needs to be. And again, sometimes we call that right sizing. What I don't want this plan to be around is it's not necessarily focused on just a consolidation. There's growth that needs to happen. There are space needs out there that this district has. You have this idea of growth of CTAE and performing arts and all these things that need houses to them. And so these community hubs, I love that idea. Like you, I love that idea. But how do you create that in a facilities plan to make sure that it does serve the entire community? We talk about this integrated planning model a lot, and this is kind of the key to the differentiator between most school districts. I think that, you know, when you get to the idea of how you want to offer schools, and I think one of the things we talk about a lot is, you know, how do we get the right school size at the right operating cost with the right programs in it? And so what happens in a school, and this happens with every school district out there, is that if you want those low operating costs and robust program offerings, that it's difficult to have smaller schools because the FTEs aren't there. You don't have enough money to operate a bunch of small schools to get that done. But if you want robust programs and small school sizes, you're going to pay a little bit for that. You will. And so also that if you have small schools and low operating costs, it's difficult to offer those robust programs. So the trick here is this, is that the trick is, what does your triangle look like? What does Atlanta's city, the public schools look like? Because every district is different. And so whether you decide that funding has to go to smaller class sizes or different types of sizes of schools or different programs, that is a decision that this district makes. Not Fulton County, not DeKalb County, not Gwinnett County. This is your district, and it's your triangle. And so a facilities plan is shaped by this and how we shape this triangle for you. You know, in the state of Georgia, you know, it's interesting how funding works, and when you get staffing based on kind of that funding dollar that walks in, it's fascinating to see kind of where those funding models can be funded by school numbers. And, you know, unfortunately, what happens is that this gets interpreted a lot as everybody just wants bigger schools, and that's not the case at all. Sometimes you need smaller schools, whether it's the population you're serving or the geography it's in or something. But overall, when you're starting to get schools that don't have the appropriate staffing in them, there is a direct impact on student outcome. And that is directly related to funding and how we fund our school buildings. No facilities plan, just so we know this, no facilities plan is based on cost saving, ever. It's not about that. It's really about maximizing your budget to get the right amount of staffing in the buildings to deliver the right amount of programs for your students. And so when you get to that maximum staffing effort, you can start to see that more staffing in there for programs is where you can get to when you get to some of those numbers. Now, look, not every high school is going to be 1,500 kids, and sometimes that's a big high school in some neighborhoods, but some will. And then how do we kind of balance our funding when it comes to that? And so what we do know is that, you know, schools that have one teacher per grade level have trouble teaching and learning because there's not a lot of resources to help them teach and learn. When I can have co-teachers and I have a team with me in the classroom, that's a big difference. When I have certified teachers working next to non-certified teachers to get them certified, that makes a big difference. And that's what this chart's about. That's exactly what this is about. This isn't about school size. This is really about the programmatic offerings that we can get into your school buildings based on that. So we use all kinds of data, facilities data, demographics, facilities condition. We're going to talk about all of this as we walk through this process. And there is a lot of data to walk through. But the key to this is, again, trying to, you know, use that trusted and verified data. You know, we talk a lot about a good facilities plan and how it balances that community engagement with data. And the trick here in facilities planning is this, is that if you lean too much on the data, you could ignore that community need. But if you lean too much on that community need, you could ignore the data. And so how do you balance that? And once again, every district I've worked in for 25 years, it's different. It is different everywhere. And so how do you build that vision with this data, and how do you work it back and forth? That's how we work through a facilities plan. So the community transparency, working with a task force. We have 100 members of a task force that are from every cluster, from every school, to make sure that their role is to do process oversight, to vet data with us, to go through those. One of our first exercises, we're going to talk about challenges and opportunities within the cluster at the grade levels, which is an opportunity to talk about the specific needs of the clusters out there. We're going to have public meetings around the educational framework. We're going to have around options and recommendations, and we're going to, you know, between surveying and online meetings and in-person meetings, we're going to try to get to all the community that we can get to. Sometimes this is going to take a deeper dive into some communities, and we kind of, sometimes in a process like this, you play that by ear. You say that, hey, this community needs somebody to come in and come to meet with us on a Tuesday night at the church, and we're going to go meet with them. If that's what we got to do, that's what we're going to do to make sure this is communicated the right way. And certainly keeping the board educated on this also. as you are part of this process, as you are citizens of this district also, but as the final say in how a facilities plan gets moved forward, really roll around policy oversight and how this applies to us, and those working with you in workshops and one-on-ones to make sure that we're hearing what your community and your constituents are saying too, when they don't necessarily get to us, but making sure that we have that line of communication all the way through this process. So there are some dates that we have set already for this. These dates look pretty solid, especially for the community task force. And then obviously we have kind of general Board of Education dates, but we're certainly going to probably add to that when we need to. So with that, any questions?
Any questions, team? Dr. Zeff? Katie, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Richter. This is a lot of ground to cover in a very short period of time. I love the triangle idea because it does feel like we have had historically sort of this non-intentional small school strategy that is very expensive and also doesn't serve kids very well in large parts of our community. So I like this holistic view. I want to get a sense of, and I was paying attention to what your work in Dallas-Fort Worth, and it seemed like you developed a ton of materials. I want to get a sense of what we should expect. If you go back to your timeline for a second, just so, because you've got a lot of ground to cover in, so keep it here for a second. So if you're coming back to us, to this body in November, I mean, for first read, so that's 5 months from now. 6 months from now, and you have only a few community meetings, are we going to get a facility condition index? Are you going to get an facility adequacy assessment by building? What should we expect to get back to this body?
Sure. Well, first on the timeline, it feels like tomorrow to me. November does. It certainly does. So we do have a lot of work to do. But yeah, you can expect that. So we have in the State of the Schools report, we've created a State of the Schools report that is posted online. That has all the relevant information when it comes to condition adequacy, capacity, enrollment, projections. We look at where students live versus where they attend. I think that was a question that Mr. Brooks had asked earlier about, but we have it by student, not by program, but we can get it by program. So, and then we have program information in there. So we have a lot of information already established in the State of the Schools report. That we will start vetting with the task force on Thursday this week. Obviously, as we go through this, there are different things, there are bits of information that people would want to see, and we can start to get those kind of things. I think questions like programmatically, where are students coming from, I think is a fair question to ask a lot of times, because I think that impacts how we do facilities planning. But there is all that data that we have to go through, and that we've already established. The district, Atlanta Public Schools actually has a really rich database. Dan Drake and his staff have just done amazing with data in the past, and we've spent the last 4 months actually vetting through that. And so the first State of the Schools report will have much of that information in it, and we'll go through and how that's distributed.
Well, I credit Mr. Norvell for putting together this robust task force of 100, and when I say 100 individuals, there's likely 100 individual opinions on that task force. And many of them have been through a process. I know certainly in District 3, there's been a lot of conversations around false starts, near misses, different configurations of folks coming to talk. And so I think people, I know we're serious. You're earnest. We have to figure out a way to deliver this for our community, because I think this uncertainty. And so I applaud you, and try to go as fast as you can without going too fast.
Okay.
Good luck.
Katie?
Thank you. Thank you for all you shared today. And I really appreciate your focus already on the programmatic approach, and that should be the focus, which I think is very different than what we've been through before. And also back to the board's role in this process is the work we'll be doing tomorrow and setting our goals. Of course, informs strategic plan, which informs facilities master planning, and then the East Blast. Like, there has to be alignment, so thank you for calling that out. And helping the community understand that. So if we're going to have a smaller school, there has to be a correlation between an increase in student outcomes and how we plan for that and budget for that. And then knowing we'll have different size schools, but again, based on how is that providing the most robust programmatic experience for our students and increasing student outcomes. My question is around how are we going to share out, or you all going to share out information discussed with the robust task force group? I'm looking forward to the public meetings that will be held, and I appreciate you saying that that could look different based on, you know, how you all have to shift with a pivot based on community input or where you need to go and meet people where they are. But knowing there'll be a lot covered in the task force meetings and the sake of transparency for the community during this process, what does that look like in terms of sharing out?
Yeah, so first of all, just by publishing just when the dates are, we want to make sure that, when, although we have invited task force members, meetings are open to your policy, right? I mean, if people want to come and observe task force, I think they're more than welcome to do that, as they should. We will, in a public setting, we will broadcast everything, we will survey things. We make it a habit of doing like individual, like 3 times a day meetings afterwards online for an hour. We call it just Meet the Consultant Hour, that you can come and just specifically talk to us about questions you might have. And so we've done that and very successfully. I think that gives people an opportunity to, when you can't get all that question answered in a big public meeting, you need some one-on-one time. And so those focus group, they end up being, we set it for like 12 or 15 people to keep it small intentionally, but we offer a lot of them to make sure that more people can join. So I think that's another way we can do it. Because I think one of the questions, and I'm going to digress just for a second because I think it goes back to data and the communication of this. I think what I don't want people to worry about is that I know that Dr. Bradshaw had this experience last week at a community meeting. A teacher was concerned about one piece of data on their school. And they were like, well, that means our school's going to close because of this, right? And that's could be furthest from the truth. When we talk about how do we do this comprehensively, you may be the school that's 180 students, or you may be, maybe, I don't know what performance means in facilities plan a lot, but that's not the driving point. The driving point is, do you have the infrastructure to provide what we need to provide in that building and for your community? You may be the school that we need, even though you are only 200 kids right now. And so I think that I want people to know in this input that there's a lot of things that go into decision making. It's never just one single point of data. And so what I hope to happen is that when we get with the task force is to explain that the panic happens early. You probably have already heard some, is my guess. But what I don't want to happen is just that. We're going to work with the community to try to build this as good as we can. There's going to be more building in some places and there's going to be less building in some places. You know what I mean? And so we need to work to that. And exactly your point of how we communicate this and how often we communicate this is going to be really important up front.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I just want us to be empathetic. Like, people don't panic because they don't have other things to do, right? So I just want us to be thoughtful. Like, panic is a tough word.
Yep.
And I think people are just having a reaction to uncertainty and lots of data and maybe some confusion about the data. But I think, it's a reflection of how invested people are in these communities, that they want to just make sure that they're informed and aware. So I know that we'll do our best job of being empathetic to that. Tolton?
Two quick notes. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing today. One kind of, I guess, just challenge to our team, which I know we do it well, but just in terms of communication to the public about those public engagement opportunities. So just want to make sure that we're doing that to the best of our ability and making sure we're communicating that to our respective constituents. But as I look at, and we shared some of this in early correspondence, but the triangle model that you shared, which I love, the stool kind of example you shared as well. One of the things I want to make sure that we just continue to bear in mind, both from a consultative perspective, but also from our perspective in-house, is this concept and notion of legacy, right? And so Atlanta being a unique place, countrywide, worldwide, right? And thinking about not only the neighborhoods and communities that our schools sit in, but the caliber of people that have been produced and nurtured through our schools and our communities as well. I want to make sure that we bear in mind legacy as we're looking at facts and figures, as we're making decisions, and having that kind of somewhere in the room, somewhere in the conversation. I'm sure community will bring that up as well, but just for the sake of our moment here, wanted to be sure that I raised that for us in our consideration.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I think that's it.
Okay.
Dr. J? Back to you, Travis.
Our tour guide will continue. Thank you.
This is the last one and the shortest one. Pleased to introduce Katie Post, Executive Director of Atlanta Partners for Education, to talk about expanding our strategic partnerships as part of our strategic plan.
Good afternoon. I'm Katie Post, Executive Director.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Hi,
Thank
is
you,
that better?
ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that. Good afternoon. I'm Katie Post. I'm the Executive Director of Atlanta Partners for Education. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. I'm going to share a bit about APFE's current work and our future goals. Founded 44 years ago as the official nonprofit partner to Atlanta Public Schools, APFE serves as a fiscal agent and strategic connector, bridging the gap between public funding and the broader community. At APFE, our role is to help drive meaningful outcomes for students, families, and educators by mobilizing strategic evergreen support around APS's priorities. Over the past year, APFE has focused on strengthening our internal operations, improving fiscal oversight, and deepening our relationships with donors. Once the board approves APS's updated strategic priorities, we will launch a targeted menu of fundraising opportunities to share with the philanthropic and business community, matching APS's needs with funder interest to maximize impact. As a separate 501c3, APFE is uniquely positioned to be nimble and think long-term, bringing in flexible philanthropic dollars that can accelerate progress for our students. This year's APFE funding partners are listed on the slide here. Even though this fiscal year has been a rebuilding year for APFE, we have secured $2.8 million in grants and pledges, with another $600,000 in grants submitted for funding. In the fall, APFE's independent board approved 4 strategic priorities to guide our fundraising: academic acceleration, college and career readiness, whole child support, and teacher development and recognition. I want to share just a few examples of how we're already advancing this work. For academic acceleration, APFE partnered with the United Way and the Joseph B. Whitehead Foundation to renew the funding for Literacy and Justice for All, a collaborative with the Rollins Center, Learn for Life, and others to ensure every APS student achieves reading proficiency by 3rd grade. In college and career readiness, we've partnered with Google, who funded a new tech hub at Mays High School, giving students hands-on, industry-aligned STEM experiences. To support educator recognition, we're working with the local family foundation to launch a district-wide awards program for outstanding STEM teachers. Through the Whole Child Fund, we provide flexible, need-based dollars for essentials like field trips, transportation, and emergency support that aren't covered in the general budget. We're currently collaborating with the APS Student and Family Support Hub to help sustain their important work. APFE is also drafting a big bet. We have a big goal to grow into a $5 million annual fundraising engine by 2030. We're modeling our growth on leading peers like the Fund for Public Schools in New York City, which raises $30 million annually, and the DC Education Fund, which brings in $15 million each year. Oh, it went, sorry. So how will APFE go about expanding partnerships and adding value at APS? APFE will add centralized fundraising for greater impact. APFE now serves as a central fundraising engine for all strategic initiatives in APS, aligning donor investments with district-wide priorities. APFE will bring to bear more strategic and scalable partnerships. By separating fundraising from program implementation, APFE is able to seek out, build, and scale high-impact partnerships across the district and our city. APFE will unlock philanthropy at scale. With dedicated fundraising and grant management capacity, APFE is positioned to secure multi-year, multi-million-dollar commitments to create a sustainable pipeline of supports for students and educators. APFE will provide fiscal stewardship and earn donor confidence. APFE will elevate APS as a citywide priority. APFE will provide data-driven, outcome-focused alignment, ensuring that APS's strategic goals are aligned to clear performance metrics, attracting funders who are committed to measurable impact and long-term investments. I hope that gives you a good sense of APFE's current work and future goals, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Cynthia?
What can we do to help you?
That's the best question ever. Thank you so much. I really look forward to sitting down with all of you and hearing what your specific needs are and ideas around your communities and how I can engage more specifically to bring to bear the resources that your students and schools are looking for. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea, and let's try to schedule some of those.
Definitely.
Yeah, we can have Michael work with you, because I definitely want to follow up with you direct about one of the opportunities that you mentioned to see what else we might be able to do across the district.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
And also, I'll just add to that, the best thing also that is once the strategic plan has been approved, I will sit down and come up, as I was mentioning, with a menu of initiatives under each strategic effort, and then I will bring that to you through Dr. Johnson and get your input on that and approval, and I really look for any insights and help that you can have in that area. That would be great.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Post, and thank you, Travis, for tour guiding and everybody that presented on strategic plan. Now Lisa Bracken will come up and talk, give us our monthly financial update as well as I guess our initial budget outlook.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. Dr. Johnson. Today I'll present 4 topics related to finance. First, I'll provide you with the financials for FY25 for all activities occurring in the months of July through March within the Consolidated General Fund. We'll review the quarterly updates of our student activity funds, discuss budget adjustments, and finally, I'll provide an overview of the FY 2026 budget, which will be before you this evening for tentative adoption. With the next 7 slides, we will cover the FY25 financials for the first 9 months of the fiscal year. The financial position continues to be relatively strong. So far, we have collected about 84.82% of total resources, with local collections at 97.69%, state at 62.24%, and other at 78.55%. We're currently tracking ahead of pace for revenue collections overall as compared to this point in time last year. Last year by April, we had collected 88.29% of total revenue, and this year we are at 90.35%. On slide 5, we see the budget actual expenditures so far for FY25. We've currently spent 70.98% of the budget allotments, and spending in all functions is appropriate for this point in the fiscal year. However, the spending trend for FY25 against 24 does show that we are ahead of pace. By the end of March last year, we had spent 70.42%, and this year we are at 70.98%. We are managing the spend down in the final months to ensure that we end this fiscal year within the allotted budgets. Detailed financials can be found in Agenda Item 9.2. We have currently earmarked a usage of fund balance of $78.29 million. However, if we assume a revenue collection of 1% above projections and a spend at 0.5% under projections, the actual usage of fund balance may be closer to $60 million. This would leave a fund balance of approximately 15.55% of current year expenditures. This is based on current trend. We are currently tracking for additional costs for utilities and charter schools and are still tracking well ahead of pace for other compensation, including subs and stipends. So we'll continue to monitor this projection closely. Federal Programs is actively preparing for upcoming federally funded summer programs and professional learning opportunities, which are expected to drive an increase in spending. This anticipated uptick will be reflected in forthcoming activity reports along with third quarter reimbursement requests from charters and partner schools. When comparing to year-to-date actuals, FY25 spending has consistently progressed at a faster pace than FY24, with the exception of Title IV. Next is our student activity quarterly share out. Schools have collected slightly more revenue than expensed at $4.52 million and $3.58 million respectively. School by school detailed reports of student activity funds can be found in Agenda Item 9.4. I'm bringing no additional budget adjustments this month. However, Agenda Item 9.3 does include the detailed information report for special revenue adjustments less than $1 million that have occurred in April. The second half of my presentation will walk through the proposed FY26 budget, which will be before you tonight for tentative adoption. Before I dive in, I want to recognize some members of the budget team that are in the audience. Can you stand up, wave? Thank you so much. These guys really every year is a challenge during the budget development process. This year we really asked for above and beyond for this team, so I want to appreciate their work this year. The second, while today's presentation will be concise, it is supported and supplemented by a wealth of materials and information on the APS budget website. All of our budget commission materials and meetings can be watched on the board's YouTube channel, and also the drafts of the department sheets and school program sheets can be found in Agenda Item 6.1. These materials capture all budget information through April 15th, so any additional changes between that date and May 15th will be reflected in the final adoption. This was a challenging year. We began this budget cycle discussing a $100 million budget gap, but the budget gap the budget will be presented to you tonight is balanced. Our multi-year projected a decrease in available resources by 1.69%. Resources are actually up by 4%. Part of this is due to the difficult decision to opt out of House Bill 581, which would have capped our access to local revenue, and other revenue drivers, including the closeout of the Atlantic Station TAD and a statewide cap on local fair share that impacted QBE funding. I'll discuss that cap in more detail. We actually allocated $5 million more to schools than we projected we would due to large increases in benefits and average salaries, while charter and partner allocations were less than projected due to changes in how we account for administrative overhead, shifts in fund balance usage, and changes in enrollment. The biggest change between our projections and where we landed is in the central office. Instead of projected in 7% growth in alignment with our historical trend, we actually reduced the central office budgets by 9%. While slide 13 shows our FY26 budget against our projection, this slide shows our FY26 budget against the current FY25 budgets. You've seen a version of this slide a few times before. Overall, we'll expect revenue and expenditures to be up by 1.76% or $22.49 million. This budget mirrors the overarching themes of this year, which is getting back to basics, being disciplined in our decisions and spending, and focusing on the long-term sustainability of the district. We ensured a transparent baseline of funding for every school, driving $45 million more to school budgets, concentrated at the elementary schools, and increased spending in core classrooms. Employee benefits are the single largest cost driver for FY26, with more than $26 million in increased benefits cost. We fully funded a 5% increase in TRS rates and increases of between 7 and 20% in state health. We cut a net 187 positions from the central office, with an overall net decrease to central office of around $28 million, and are constraining growth in the utilities budgets. We utilized a zero-based budgeting process for signature programs and turnaround, and reduced duplicated funding for some of our APS programs. Our current year cuts allowed for us to expedite a textbook adoption while still funding a step increase for all employees next year. And most importantly, we have reduced our dependence on fund balance by 78%. Next, we'll take some look at some changes to revenue since my last presentation. We'll focus on state QBE. Our preliminary projections showed a conservative increase in state funding of 1% or $3 million. We projected an increase in our local fair share of 8% in alignment with historical local revenue trends. However, for the second year in a row, local fair share was capped at the state level because of local fair share exceeding 20% of the overall QBE earnings. While great for our district, this trend does demonstrate that more districts in the state are becoming more dependent on local revenue as QBE fails to keep pace with costs. Historically, local fair share has increased around 7.5%, but with this cap, we have more access to the QBE funds. As a reminder, the board set a resource parameter that limited the usage of fund balance to no more than 12.5% of projected revenue, and the budget before you today, along with our assumptions of how we may close out the current year, will leave $181 million or 13.92% of fund balance available. Next, we'll deep dive into some of the cost drivers. While the budget is very lean, we're still able to maintain the significant investments in base salary from last year, while including an additional step increase for all employees. HR is also reviewing specific areas to ensure we remain competitive. As mentioned many times before, employee benefits are the primary cost driver. We discussed this slide in detail before, but it bears repeating because this can sometimes be an invisible cost, but represents a significant investment not only to the district, but a value to our employees. Slide 24 shows a breakout of our school budgets by cluster. All clusters show an overall year-over-year increase in allocations, even as enrollment continues to decline in some clusters. And while we do see a modest increase in enrollment for FY25 in our traditional schools and are projecting a small growth again for FY26, we're still serving about 7,000 fewer students in our traditional schools than we were 10 years ago. This means the district continues to fund small schools, and for FY26, we're allocating an additional $11.5 million in school budgets for small school, baseline, and dual campus supplements. Keep in mind that this does not represent the full cost of a small school, including additional administrative overhead, both centrally and in the schools, utilities, transportation, and programmatic costs. Slide 27 shows a board overview of how schools have a broader overview of how schools have spent their allocations, concentrating additional funds in the core classroom, but also making significant investments in fine arts, exceptional students, and other student supports. These details can be found in the school sheets attached to the tentative budget adoption. For the details of how schools earned their allocations and any changes from their allocations last year, you can scan this QR code. And our work this year primarily focused on identifying efficiencies in the central office. Overall, we reduced the budgets by $28 million or 11.3%. We reduced 281 positions, added 94 for a net decrease of 187. The position changes saved about $20 million, and existing positions cost more due to the step increase and benefits increases, but these increases were offset by cuts of more than $24 million to non-personnel. While the multi-year shows a much stronger outlook than the last time we spoke, we are not done. While we should be working to restore fund balance, the multi-year shows that without further cost reduction measures, we will remain dependent on fund balance in the out years. This multi-year assumes steady growth based on historical trend and does not capture new targeted investments in support of district goals or additional strategic initiatives. We should continue to focus efforts on building a stronger base, because bold and targeted budgeted realignments now will mean that we're in a position to do more bold and targeted investments in the out years. Slides 31 and 32 show the proposed budget against the budget parameters and have been discussed in detail in other slides or previous budget commission meetings. This chart shows the proposed budget for FY26 against the FY25 adopted. The budget by function slide shows a significant increase in dollar amounts to direct instruction and continued investment in pupil support services. Of note, for the first time in many years, we're exceeding a 65% investment in direct instruction in alignment with state statute. Here you can clearly see the majority of new spending is going to salary and benefits. Other large increases are in other purchase services where charter and partner schools are budgeted. Other objects holds the school's reserves and contingencies. And of course, the budget is made up of much more than the general fund. Details of the special revenue, SPLOST, nutrition, and student activity funds were presented in detail on April 18th at the Budget Commission meeting. Since that presentation, we're including projections for title carryover and shifting 300 from SPLOST to special revenue. Overall, other funds represent about 29.4% of the total APS budget. The total budget for all funds brought to you today for tentative adoption equals about $1.84 billion. The first two public hearings on the budget is scheduled for, the first of two public hearings of the budget is scheduled for tonight at 6 p.m. We'll host two informational meetings on the budget on May 6th and again on May 13th. Our final Budget Commission meeting is scheduled for May 15th, and final adoption is June 2nd. The appendix includes additional information, including the budget timeline and various materials that have been shared at previous Budget Commission meetings. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions you have.
Thank you, Dr. Bracken. We'll take some questions from everyone, apparently. Also, I just always appreciate like the detail, the diligence, everything you do. And I just want to publicly thank you and Dr. Johnson and team. Reduction of 187 positions to the tune of $28 million. It was the work that was so important that we make sure that we're operating a really tight and powerful central office, right? And so obviously we know that's not easy, and we know that that makes people uneasy. But we had to do it. We were robust in the central office, so thank you. I know it wasn't a simple task, but my community has also noted that, so I really appreciate it. And we'll start over here, Katie. Katie loves budget, Dr. Bracken.
Love budget. Well, and I really appreciate you, Dr. Bracken, and the budget team, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for saying it, Vice Chair McDonald, because it needs to be said over and over again. Y'all had a very challenging budget season, you know, with a $100 million gap starting at the beginning, and then having to balance this, obviously with the focus on students, really see that reflected in this budget, but also with our current structure, which is why we were entering the phase we're entering, and looking forward to how we best position ourselves. Going back to slide 30, I think that's one that people really need to pay attention to. And I'm just calling that out because I think that really tells the story again of where we are and the hard work that's been put into restructuring things here, but there's a lot more opportunity. So I guess my questions are around, and I know I asked this before, and thank you for your response, but how much do you see changing between our tentative adoption tonight and our final adoption? And I will just call out, I see one area that's under our purview as a board that I hope does shift. But how much do you see changing? I know you all are continuing to look at cost savings where appropriate.
Yeah. So I feel like we're going to be relatively stable. What you may see is a shift in how much fund balance we're using if we're able to do further reductions in the central office. I know that there's a few other areas that we're still looking into that we might be able to do some of that shift. But there's no new investments. We double checked that again last week. That is not on our radar. And so if anything, we're going to come off of that usage of fund balance projection for final adoption.
Excellent. I'll let Ken ask more questions about fund balance. And then just, you know, because people are asking us questions in this time and space we're in, how do you see us best positioning ourselves when we have uncertainty around funding sources outside of the general fund?
Yeah, so getting this fund balance back up to that stronger 15% of expenditures is the right direction, not only for the uncertainties around special revenue, but also so that we can do some of those big bet investments, some of which may be one-time in nature and are perfect examples of where you should be using fund balance targetedly and strategically instead of to just close budget gaps every year. And so when you do have that strong fund balance, it offers you more choice as you go into your budget cycles.
Thank you for emphasizing all of that. I think we should always be doing facilities master planning, well, within 5-year periods, but it couldn't be more important right now. And appreciate all the work you've done to help us build up the fund balance and, of course, really make sure we're protecting the general fund and those dollars going towards students and the work we have ahead of us. So thank you so much.
Dr. Z?
Thank you, and thank you for the hard work, and to your team, who I know has believe that's the best thing I'll be called all day. I appreciate you guys have been working hard. I know this is not easy work. And I appreciate also that there were adds and subtracts. It wasn't just a we're gonna just cut. It was much more strategic than that. A couple questions. First, around the federal side, some of us that read the papers, seems like there's some uncertainty happening. Title I and IDA, I've heard, are going to be where they are, but some of the surrounding funds, is that baked in here? How exposed do you think we are to turbulence at the federal level?
Yeah, so what's not baked in here is those, any changes to title or any of those programming, because we do feel confident that we'll maintain that at least going into the FY26 fiscal year. We haven't heard anything that might impact that. I think where you'll see it more is in less in our financials, more in the nonprofits and partnership worlds, where we have people or partners or nonprofits that might be supporting us, not necessarily through a financial contribution, but through their services to our students. So we might not see a lot of dollar loss, but you still could see impact in services to schools. I'm familiar with, various nonprofits that are federally funded that are not planning to receive those funds going forward. And so I think that's a broader conversation of how we continue to serve and fill the gaps where maybe that was in the past. And again, that goes back to where we have a stronger fund balance and we're able to lean in a little bit more nimbly when services fall off from our partners.
We'll look for updates from you. I know the situation is still being revealed to us. I do appreciate that, and let me make sure I get this right, that every school per student funding has increased in all APS schools as part of this budget. I know some schools' overall budget hasn't increased because they've lost a lot of kids. But on a per student basis, every school, and some of that money got absorbed into salaries and into benefits for staff. But across the board, every school has more money budgeted to it per student than last year.
Yeah, the only case, I don't know about the per student, because if we had a large enrollment increase, the per pupil might have decreased a bit. But where we saw any schools losing money, they were losing enrollment of 73, 50-something students. So large enrollment decreases might have triggered it. But for the most part, yes, every school was receiving more money. Not every school will feel that, but they will receive additional funding.
Well, I think it's important to pair that with the central office cuts. Last question. This is a little bit of a scary slide. The bottom row. In row FY27, if you go all the way to the bottom, we're below our board policy of 12.5%, which we even reduced from 15%. So is there? So we got a lot of work ahead. I know it's just a call to action, but I don't want to lose the moment.
Yeah, we presented this last year, and that gap at the bottom was 100 million. So this year it's 9 million. So we're starting the conversation, and all of this is just if we stay on the trajectory we're on, right? So lots of opportunities, decisions to be made, choices that we as a board through our strategic planning process and as an administration can redirect this course. But if we stay where we're at, this is what the multi-year looks like.
Great, thanks. Going on to the other side. Oh, it's a clear house. Okay. Oh, they can't resist. Okay, here we go. No, don't ever say sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia. No, you go ahead.
Okay. Going back to slide 24, which is the budget and enrollment comparisons for each cluster. Can you explain what non-traditional schools are down there at the bottom? Because with an 18.33% increase, I'm just curious as to how
the bulk of that enrollment increase is Phoenix Academy. So our non-traditional schools, what's falling in that category would be BEST, CSK, Phoenix, AVA, ACCA. some of our program and school offerings that are not our traditional schools. And we are projecting some increases in our Phoenix Academy enrollment that is driving a large percentage of that. So it's a big percentage increase. Student-wise, it's 300 students over all of those programs and offerings.
How do we account for students that are enrolled in their local school and a non-traditional school?
Yeah, that's one of the inefficiencies that we addressed this year when I spoke about eliminating some of the duplicated funding in our traditional schools and our programs. This year, we just looked at our AVA full-time virtual programming and the Phoenix Academy programming. So traditionally, what we've done in the past is we would fully fund the per pupil funding for that student in their home school, so the traditional school where that student's enrollment is counting, and also fully fund the program cost. And so the student, especially for, I'll use the AVA as an example, a full-time AVA student may never set foot into their traditional campus, but we were 100% funding the per pupil for that student in there and also the programming. So what we did at the beginning of this year when schools received their budgets, high schools received their budgets, we withheld the per pupil allotment, the base per pupil allotment, for the students we projected going to either AVA or Phoenix Academy. And so we're using those dollars to supplement and support those programs so that we can try to reduce some of that duplicated funding that we had in the past.
Will we be looking at some of the other non-traditional models?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea as we think about how and if we can build out ACCA, a way that our traditional schools can help to support that, as also we think about partnerships and where other funding can come from. But that this is a test pilot year. We're going to see how leveling goes when we see how many students actually show up in our programs versus in our schools. The goal is always that as we are trying to reduce some of those inefficiencies, we don't create instabilities in our school programming. So we want to make sure that we're reducing in such a way that is measured and well communicated with the principals so that we're not reducing funding during the middle of the year around programming that they may have anticipated.
Does that category also include Hank Aaron? Or
Yes.
Is it? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I think that might be it, sir.
All right, now it's time for us to engage in our board goal monitoring for interim goal 1.1 and 1.2. Interim goal 1.1 identifies the percentage of students in grades 3 through 5 at a Georgia milestone, ELA, EGO, which I really need to spell that out, so I make sure everybody understands what these acronyms are. Assessment to achieve level of proficiency or above as estimated by the MAP Georgia Reading Assessment. Interim goal 1.2 identifies the percentage of the students in grades 6 through 8 at a Georgia milestone ELA EOG assessment achievement level of proficiency or above as estimated by the MAP Growth Reading Assessment. I would like to take some time to review the norms and expectation of the monitoring session as Dr. Johnson take us through the monitoring report. He will discuss the district progress towards interim goal 1.1, the percentage of students in grades 3 through 5 with a projected milestone achievement level of proficient or above in ELA reading on the district universal screenings assessment will increase from 38.4% in May of 2024 to 41.4% in May of 2025. Interim goal 1.2, the percentage of students in grades 6 through 8 with a projected Georgia milestone achievement level of proficient or above in ELA reading on the district universal screening assessment will increase from 31.2% in May 2024 to 34.2% in May of 2025. Board members, please remember your comments and questions to be focused on creating engagement and dialogue with the superintendent. What are the factors that leads to the current level of achievement? Did the district make progress towards spring School year 2025 goal, why and why not? What's a strategic resource, worked well or not? What challenges and adjustments need to be made? Will the district require additional resources to meet this goal? And what support do you need from the board to be successful? Please hold all your questions until Dr. Johnson had a chance to walk us through the report. Dr. Johnson.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I won't spend a ton of time in the data because the data is pretty like it's there. And so you can see the 3 through 8, 26% of students. Again, I think this is where there's opportunity as we go tomorrow, as we talk to really make sure we set the why and set ourselves up for what our targets will be in 2026, and just like we'll pick a number and we'll go after it. Next slide. When you get to goal 1, when you look at 3 through 8, the goal, you see the goal was to increase from 31.2 to the Y in the Y, well, 31.2 in 2022 to the Y in 2026. You can see where the district currently stands at 35.5%, and you can see that we're off track when you look at grades 3 through 8. When you look overarching at 3 through 8 on Georgia milestones, just another look here, you can see that we remain off track at 35.5% for the 23-24 school year, which this is lagging data, but paints a pretty clear picture. Interim goal 1.1 says that students in grades 3 through 5, using the projection on the Georgia milestone, will go from 38.4 in 24 to 41.4 in 2025. You can see some improvement there, but we are still below the target at 40%. And so still work to be done in grades 3 through 5. And then in grades 6 through 8, you can see that the goal was to move from 31.2 to 34.2. In May of 2025, and you can see that the projected target is 35.6. And so you can see in grades 6 through 8, it appears that we are exceeding the target. Overall progress, you can see the breakdown if you look at the next slide. I'm sorry, go one more slide. One more slide. One more slide. Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm looking down versus looking up. You can see the board goal and the status. You can see off track overall. When we look at literacy, you can see the 1.1 status from an interim standpoint, the 1.2 status as we look. And as I just spoke to, it's below target in 3.5 and then 6.8. We are above. And then you can see, if you look at the next slide, just kind of how things look from a grade band growth standpoint, and we see these incremental. Primarily, you see some gains, or you see some 1 and 2 point moves, and a lot of work still remaining to be done in 3 through 5. Again, pretty stagnant in 6 through 8. Similarly so, right? Again, I think the overarching, you can see the red on account of incremental decrease, which is below, but again, it's pretty incremental. So I want to spend the bulk of my time on the administrative next steps, which I think there's opportunity to lean into. If we go to the next slide, there we go. I think it's going to be really, really important as we lean into addressing what is a literacy crisis, frankly, across the country. Atlanta Public Schools no different. To make sure that there's strong instructional leaders at the helm of all of our schools, and frankly speaking, we want to continue to support and grow and develop our pipelines, but then also be intentional about placement and appointment as we look at the leaders that go into schools, making sure that they have a strong instructional base and are able to really lead the charge that's necessary. That becomes really, really important, and you'll see that. I know I'd share with this board that it's really important as we go through our hiring cycle. We are obviously we're recommending some principals this month. I believe it to be really important that we have principals in place by the June meeting, and so you'll see us on a consolidated really track for June to get really quality leaders in front of you all for consideration of approval. And we're going to look at what we need to do to make sure we still engage our school communities, but to also be true to filling the vacancies with strong instructional leaders at each of the schools. Next is, around I'm sorry, not next slide, but the next point. I'm spending a little time on this slide because this is where to me, the work is. Not this one, but the next one. So the next is to increase the expectation around Tier 1 instruction and really high-level delivery. So, I will speak philosophically. When we talk about that $100,000, goal or target to 2030, it's not the 100,000, right, in isolation. It's really this identification of, and this reality that we know that the best teachers being in front of our children are frankly the most important thing that we can do. The research shows that no matter how great your superintendent is, there was no, come on, I'm waiting on that. Come on, Ken Zeff. I mean, this is, oh, sorry, how great the board is. No matter how great any of this really doesn't matter. The teacher in the classroom is what makes the biggest difference in the quality. So everybody here if the teacher in the classroom is tremendous. And so supporting that teacher in the classroom becomes the most critical work we can do, and high quality Tier 1 instruction, right, is the most important thing that we can do. So teaching and learning, the team's done a great job, Dr. Butler, of really making sure that we identified high quality curriculum, and board appreciate your approval of HMH as well as benchmark. Schools will shortly begin to receive those resources, and training has already, the plans around training is there. You'll see us lean into this summer targeted continuous improvement planning and work. We want to make sure there's a connection between the continuous improvement plans and actually what's executed on. Tommy and team will be leaning into that, and then really connected professional learning. Really throughout the continuum. One of the things we want to get even better at is, frankly, when we think about our training and a just-in-time approach, nobody shows up wanting to be unsuccessful. I firmly believe that. Everybody really wants to be successful. It's incumbent upon us to be able to dissect and determine what's necessary in order for our teachers to be successful. When you look at the North Star, and you look at the EOGs, the end of grade assessments that take place, it's important for us to get positioned to where we get a standards outlook. And right now, frankly, we don't have that. We don't have a systemic standards outlook on where we are as a district, which puts us in a tough spot in being able to respond in a timely way and to be able to provide training and support, and frankly, to identify who's knocking out of the park and who still needs some support. And so we've got to do that with our assessment work. A lot of work is going on, conversations have gone on with the assessment task force, which is connected to the next point there. And we've just got to get stronger in our assessment practices and bring more alignment and coherence across the district. It's not necessarily to assess more, but to get more streamlined so that the information that we're getting is actually driving our practice. And then we'll continue the work with Leadership and Justice for All. We're excited about being an awardee of additional support there, and we'll continue in the science of reading and the resourcing and supporting of our teachers and leaders in schools. Again, expanding investment. You saw us in this budget cycle. Lisa presented. We had to do some things at the elementary grade band to get the investment right, and we'll continue to work through the expansion of that as we work through the next several budget cycles. And again, it's important to note. I know Lisa put up that multi-year outlook. Like, we'll be very disciplined from a budgeting standpoint. Very, very disciplined from a budgeting standpoint. And so we'll like, I come from the school of the dollars that you have, or the dollars that you have, and you don't have it more dollars than the dollars that you have. And so we have to get aligned to the dollars that we have and use them with a level of intentionality that'll move us forward. Early learning investment, I think one of the things, and you see it in the strategic plan as we proposed, kind of looking at as we look at really getting upstream. I'll say very frankly one of the things that excites me about APS when I really think about where we are a large city in a major city. When you think about many of the major cities that are mentioned with us, whether you pick Chicago or LA or Miami or Houston, when you think about those large cities, a lot of them have 200,000 and 300,000 student school districts. We are a 50,000 student school district, and so our ability to really be nimble and do transformative work, I think, is unique, and we should be leaning into transformative work. And I believe there's some opportunity for us with community partners to lean in for additional early learning investment. And why not Atlanta? When we talk about literacy, we talk about third grade so much. But we got to get even further upstream, we believe, and there's some opportunity to do that. And then continued partnership and increased expectation with our community of believers, as Dr. Krim mentioned. Share responsibility and accountability for and of families and our partners, city, communities, et cetera. When we think about how you move literacy, you don't move literacy alone. You move literacy through highly trained teachers and great curriculum and aligned assessments and timely professional learning and all those things, which are really, really important. And you also need that outside support. What's happening to our students outside of school time, what's happening to our students during the summer, which we'll talk about later in comments, and all the things. So with that, I'll yield, Madam Chair. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Board Member Howard, and then Board Member Dr. Zeff.
Sorry to start again, but sure. I will say, Ken, to your point, the most important part probably is the board in terms of our priorities, to hire a great superintendent. But just hearing that, it's all your fault, Ken. No, but you're right. I mean, again, how we prioritize and focus as a board to ensure we have that high quality instruction and take the action that we'll need to take as a board is hugely important. So glad we lifted that up. The assessment task force, looking at, I know that work, you're in the midst of that work, but I know, for instance, at one of our engagements at South Atlanta, that was something we heard from some educators in the room, just all the assessments and the coordination. How is that, the work that task force is doing, being communicated out to educators so they know kind of what we're in the midst of?
I don't think that. So I appreciate you raising that question. I don't think the goal was to have continuous communication out as it was ongoing, but now we're kind of at that ending point where we'll have some fruits of the labor. Frankly speaking, I'll give for instance, I pointed out, I may have shared in the board update, but I pointed out that, teaching and learning, I don't know that we put it in there this week, but teaching as a byproduct of us just getting a little more tightly aligned, we were able to send to schools the things that the district, quote unquote, was purchasing, and from teaching and learning, such that they're not purchasing things the same way and you're not buying an assessment platform that the district is already going. What we've got going on right now, frankly, are so of course we do MAP, right? But then you've got a lot of schools that are buying their own assessment things to get an outlook on the standards, right? And so we've got this kind of balance of, we're looking at growth and more skill based, and we're looking at the standards piece, and these principals want to look. A lot of principals want to look at how are my students going to perform on the end of year assessment, and although there's pretty strong projectability, between the MAP and what's there, it's not quite as tangible from a training standpoint of what we provide. We're not really able to get to the level where we can provide systemic training based on what we can take some shots at it, some in the dark, but being really precise is how you get to where you want to be. And so, as we've communicated with principals, we'll communicate even more out as a byproduct of what we've gotten from the assessment task force as we go through the summer and we get ready for next year. Yep.
I really appreciate that, and know we're in the midst of shifts that are in the right direction, and you're so great about communicating with us. And I know a lot information is going out in an intentional way. So appreciate that. But just wanted to lift that because I'm excited about the shifts and again, going the right direction, but knowing that, it's change, right? So thank you for sharing that, and for the work that's been taking place in that area, because we know it's a need. And looking forward to digging in deeper tomorrow, especially around our goals and what we're talking about right here, and filling in those X's and those Y's.
Board Member Dr. Zeff.
Thank you. Thank you for this. And look, we have to be honest about how we're doing. If you can go to slide 4 for a second, because I think two things are true at the same time. That the number, if you go to slide 4, it's the grade 3 through 8. You look at there it is at the right there. At the bottom row, economically disadvantaged kids are 12%. Devastating, right? 1 out of 8 kids. But at the same time, progress has happened. I mean, that number, it's not almost doubled, to over 20%. So I do want to recognize that folks are working hard and change is happening. It's slow. It's not nearly fast enough. But to say that, we're just, if you look, it's obvious a lot of work needs to be done, but 8%, 9% gain, almost 1,500 kids, 1,400 kids are now on the right side of the line. That is encouraging. We've made Dr. Bracken talk about this investment, and you've talked about this investment to elementary schools. What should parents expect? What will we see more? Where does that money go? Is it more instructional coaches, different materials, more contact time, lower class size? Where is that? What's your vision of how that money gets deployed to improve literacy?
Yeah, I'm happy to defer that question. So I think one of the realities that is APS, like speak really candidly, because I think these are all things we've got to grapple with, right? So we've got a structure where there's a decent bit of autonomy, like a significant bit of autonomy in budget development at the school level, right? So determining how I use those funds, there's a good bit of autonomy by school as to how they're going to direct that.
Sure. So I thank you for the question. I'll go back to my presentation. We won't pull it up, but there's 2 slides in there. One where we talk about how schools are using their dollars differently, and a second how they have earned their dollars differently than the previous year. The first one where they are, where we're showing how they've used their dollars, more money going into direct instruction. So that's core classroom. Maybe supplies, maybe textbooks, all of it, most of it's going into direct instruction. But you do see more in fine arts as well, supplementing some of those additional fine arts programming, especially at our elementary schools. But I will also point people to our tentative adoption agenda item in Assembly. We do have the program sheets there. And you can see every school where they earned dollars, where they purchased positions and programming, and how that compares to the previous year. And you can see elementary by elementary school how they have shifted their allocations from the previous year.
Thanks for that. And Dr. Johnson, I just want to back you up on this idea that if it's the Wild West and it's not working, then it's okay to say, look, maybe we need more instructional coaches. Maybe we need, your leadership is greatly appreciated here.
Yes, and I just want to clarify. I don't think there's any shortage of instructional coaches in Atlanta public schools. And if I'm speaking freely, and I'm gonna speak freely anyway. Do what you want. Like the truth is, it's not a resource issue, right? Like it's not, and 100% to the incremental gains. But it's not a resource issue. It's like an intentional, and let me be really clear. I will put it back on the board. I put it on superintendent. I put it across the place. Like the clarity of this group around what the North Star is. When we get rid of these X's and Y's, and then we say we're going to commit to doing something and it will live perpetually, and there's not this, kind of whiplash, what resource is it this year, then you're going to pack it all up and put it away, and then it's something else in 2 years. When we get really committed, collective, right? And I think I'm excited about tomorrow. I'm excited about the progress we're making in that space, but it's only going to allow student outcomes to improve. And so I'll use something Soft G says that I think is true, like student outcomes don't change. Okay, and so that's really, really important to me. This is the work that is really, really important. Okay.
I'm hearing no other questions. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our work session items for today. Thank you, everyone. Madam General Counsel, is there a reason for the board to retreat into executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair, the board needs to discuss student discipline, personnel, and legal matters.
Is there a motion to enter into executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown, second by Board Member Pace. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We retreat into executive session.